So maybe you, or someone you know, your kids, your cousins, friends, whatever, has binders of Pokemon cards, shoe boxes, tins, full of cards they've collected, but they've got no idea what to do with them. Or maybe you've watched a recent stream of a competitive tournament of the Pokemon TCG, or maybe you just got your first battle deck for Christmas and you're trying to look in on how to improve that deck. You're in the right place. Here's the problem I've seen though. There are hundreds of brilliant people reviewing, breaking down, or play testing decks that are either winning tournaments or are close to decks that are winning tournaments, or they're playing fun, gimmicky decks that maybe aren't competitive but are a blast to play. But there's nobody out there teaching people how to build decks that are effective with the cards that they have available to them. There's also not a lot of information that explains to beginners on what to consider when you're building a deck for the first time, or you're modifying a deck that someone else has built and maybe you're trying to copy the list or modify that. And let's face it, there's an overwhelming amount of information on the internet, and it's really difficult to know where to start when it comes to buying cards online, copying deck lists that you see on the internet, and knowing how to play those decks. It's hard to know exactly where to buy these cards. You can go to a store, or you can go online to a reputable website, and you can buy 60 cards, and there's your deck. Buying those cards and setting yourself up with a tournament-winning deck is like putting a toddler in a tank. So my goal here today is to highlight the important components of a deck that make it work consistently from battle to battle and against different matchups. And we're actually going to create our own deck in real time using this Scarlet and Violet Elite Trainer box. But before that, a quick introduction. I'm Brett. As a 90s kid, Pokemon has always been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. I collected the cards, played the video games, I had all the toys, clothes, and collectibles that came with them. But fast forward to 2024, my wife and I teach kids and their parents how to play the game at our local library. We've hosted tournaments, we've had trade days, and we've started to bring our community together for kids and families that really don't know where to start when it comes to playing the Pokemon TCG. In this time, I've paid close attention to competitive play, the best decks in the format, and kind of just expanding my knowledge, and I've done my best to make that information more digestible for beginners. Now that you know who I am and why I'm here, here's what we're going to talk about today. 1, we're going to go over the basic rules of building a 60-card deck. 2, we're going to talk about the key components of a deck and things to consider when building any deck. And 3, we're going to go over 2 basic strategies to help build decks. So, starting off with the rules of any Pokemon TCG deck. The first one, and the major one, is that all decks must be 60 cards. Not 59, not 61, 60. In those 60 cards, you must have at least one basic Pokemon, and you can have no more than 4 of any Pokemon or trainer card or special energy, the only exception to that rule being that you may have as many basic energies as you desire. However, different variations of the same Pokemon exist. For example, you could have 4 Pikachu, 4 Pikachu V, 4 Pikachu V Max, 4 Raichu, and 4 Alolan Raichu, all in the same deck, even though at that point you'd have 12 Pikachus and 8 Raichus. The thing to note is that regional variants, Pokemon V, VMAX, V-Star, EX, or regional variants of Pokemon differ from the original Pokemon themselves, allowing you to possibly have up to 12 or 16 of the same Pokemon, just in different versions in one deck. The last rule to keep in mind when building a deck is standard formatting. If you want your deck to be standard format legal, all cards must be in the rotation F, G, or H. Moving on to the second part of deck building, we're looking at focusing on deck components and considerations when building a deck. The first key component to building a deck is consistency, or whether or not you can execute your play strategy regularly against different opponents in different game situations. Consistent decks rely on built-in search and draw support, as well as having multiple cards that your strategy revolves around. because you're more likely to find a card if you have 3 or 4 of them as opposed to only 1. The second component of a deck is the acceleration, or your ability to attack multiple energies per turn, evolve your Pokemon as soon as possible, and execute your strategy before your opponent can execute theirs. And finally, there's disruption, which is stopping your opponent from executing their strategy altogether or slowing them down. Disruption typically includes discarding cards from your opponent's hand, shuffling your opponent's hand, removing energies, or switching out an active Pokemon that's not ready to battle yet. Next, there are many things to be brought into consideration when building a deck, such as Qianpao EX, for example. You have to discard energies from your Pokemon in order to do more damage, so naturally your thought should be how to preserve energies instead of just having to load 20 into a deck when you can use 8 and continue to recycle them with things like Super Rod, Superior Energy Retrieval, and so on. Ultimately, as broad of a term as consideration can be, when you're looking at the Pokemon in your deck, you should be considering what their weaknesses may be and what cards you can use to make sure that you're able to attack with them effectively and often. Now that you've got an idea of what to look out for when building a Pokemon TCG deck, it's time to talk about strategies for building them. The first strategy is the 20-20-20 strategy, which consists of a deck built with 20 Pokemon, 20 trainers, and 20 energy, and it's what I think is best for beginners. Having a deck with equal parts Pokemon, trainers, and energy can make the deck a little more stable and less reliant on the effects and abilities of a very few specific cards. Current Ancient and Future box decks that are in the format work well with this strategy because they allow the deck to attack with several different attackers depending on your opponent's strategy, and you're less reliant on getting one specific Pokemon on your bench where you could have 3, 4, 5 options at any given time. More effective Future and Ancient decks are more of a 15-30-15 split, more reliant on trainers to execute better consistency and acceleration, but the concept remains the same. The second strategy to building a Pokemon TCG deck is what I call reverse engineering, where you're taking 1 or 2 specific Pokemon that you're looking to battle with, and you're building an entire 60-card deck around just that combination or pair, utilizing its attack effects or abilities to the fullest to execute a strategy. When reverse engineering a deck around a few specific Pokemon, the other 50 whatever cards you have in your deck are really just reliant on making that Pokemon stable, covering its weaknesses, and making sure it can hit just about any Pokemon in any other given deck without a hitch. Now that we know the rules for building a deck, things to consider, and the components necessary for building an effective deck, and strategies on putting one together, it's time to open that Elite Trainer box and see if we can use just the cards inside to make a deck that'll work at any beginner level. Alright, so now we're set up to open up our packs in our Elite Trainer box, and then from there, build a deck with just what we've got available in these 9 booster packs, as well as a chunk of energy. For any of you that haven't done much collecting, here's why I recommend an Elite Trainer box starting out, because you get a pack of sleeves for your deck right off the bat. You get damage counters and battle dice, so if you buy 1 Elite Trainer box, you've got everything you need to go to a friend's house, whatever, play against mom, dad, friends, and you can get into a game with your deck. You get your 9 booster packs that we're going to open, and you get this great Rhydon promo card, which honestly, unless we end up getting no good electric type Pokemon, this will probably end up in the deck. You also get 4 dividers for organizing your cards, and you get a brick of 45 energies, which allows you to effectively build a deck out of the 9 packs you're given. So for anyone interested, you can scan the QR code to get the Elite Trainer box stuff online. But without any further ado, let's open some Pokemon cards. I'm going to try to keep everything neat and organize as I go, and possibly highlight just any good cards that I come across that will probably end up in the deck regardless of what I end up with. So we've got Wattrel, Krokorok, Mankey, Squawkabilly, that could be a good one. Team Star Grunt, 2 Team Star Grunt, a Zangoose, Growlithe, Toedscruel, and Annihilate, as well as an energy card. Was there no code card in that booster pack? I'm lost. Already don't know what's going on. Zoomed in a little bit for your sake. An energy switch, that could come in handy. We've got Varoom, Clauncher, Skiddo, Stonejourner, Penny, which could be absolutely useful in just about any deck, a Medicham, a Clawitzer, a Mareep, and oh, we actually got the Miriam full art. So Miriam can be pretty useful, but not unanimously, but it'll still probably end up in the deck. The challenge that we have here with just 9 booster packs isn't going to be energy. We should be able to get enough Pokemon of similar typings into a 60 card deck. The biggest restriction we have when only opening 9 booster packs of Pokemon cards is the amount of trainers that we're going to get, because most likely we're going to get like 12 to 15, and it's not even going to set us up for a 20-20-20 split. But anyway, we've got Quaxley, Squovit. This is a super good card as far as if you have a bad hand and you're dead drawing, you can at least shuffle it back in and get 1 card. If you have other draw supporters in the deck, this is a good one to have, so that'll probably go in. We've got Sharkaday, Lechonk, Quaxwell, Cyclizar, Toedscruel, a Rock Chestplate, which could be good if we get some good fighting type Pokemon, Chansey, and Slowbro. None of these packs have code cards. None of them. I'm so confused. This one does. Okay. Rotom, Chansey, Rare Candy. If we end up with a Stage 2 Pokemon, this will be perfect. Fido, Tatsugiri. Jack is a great supporter for beginners. Lets me search out evolution Pokemon. Florigato, Flamigo. We got the Wiglet Art Rare, which is cute. I don't see it being much use though. And we got the Banette EX, which could end up being our heavy hitter in the deck. Cool. Now we're getting code cards here. We've got Starly, Tarantula, Wattrel. I know that's not the first one we've seen. Krokorok, we got Mousehold, we have the Vitality Band, which again, good in any deck, really. Toxtricity, Flabebe, a Pokeball, which isn't awesome, but could go in the deck. Armarouge, this is a great card if you're playing Fire-type decks, because it lets you move energies freely, but I don't think we have any fighters worth bringing into the deck that are Fire-type yet. But that could change. We've still got 4 packs left. Deme, Pineco, Flittle, Fuecoco, EXP Share, another great Pokemon tool. Stonejourner, another Penny, Pomo, Seviper, and Dondozo. So not a whole lot there. Mankey again, another Squawkabilly, good support. Alomomola, Croclore, Muck, Florges, another Team Star Grunt, a Sandile, and a Meowscarada. So there's our Stage 2. I actually think we already have the first 2 evolutions in this line. So if we end up with some grass type attackers and some support, could go in the deck. If you hear the banging in the background, there's no code card in this one either. If you hear the banging in the background, my wife is trying to scare off birds. Yeah. We got a Drifloon, Sprigatito. See, there's our, our evolution line. Flittle, another Viper, Flaffy, Blissey. Pretty sure we saw a Chansey earlier. Another Tatsugiri, a Slowbro, a Room, Professor's Research. Awesome card to have. Pretty much one in any deck you could ever build. If you're dead drawing, if you have 2 cards in your hand that aren't much use, Professor's Research could save you. But we're down to our last pack here. We've only got that 1 EX to work with, and honestly, I don't even know if I've seen a Shuppet to evolve the Banette. So we may be trying to build a 60 card deck with no real main attacker, which is okay. Again, that kind of delivers the point of the video. But we've got a Houndoom, a Fido, Scatterbug, another Drifloon, another Cyclizar, another Vitality Band, which is okay. Toxtricity, Houndour, and we got the Houndoom, could help us. We got Riolu. Oh, look at that. All right, we got Gardevoir EX. We actually got the full art. So if we have a Shuppet somewhere, which I don't think we do, we could pair it pretty well with Gardevoir, as long as we have a Ralts and a Kirlia. We've also got that rare candy, so that could help. Oh, and there's your last code card. All right, so here's the deck profile that I put together. Yes, I'm wearing a hat. In between clips, I did trash and recycling. It started raining, hair's all wet. Deal with it. Anyways, before we start this deck profile, I snuck a Scarlet Violet base Shuppet into this deck because there was just no lead as far as what Pokemon to lead with in this deck without being able to use the Shuppet Banette line. I also considered throwing in Ralts to have a 1-0-1 Ralts Kirlia Gardevoir line. That would have changed the whole complexion of the deck. I would have allowed me to use like Cycle Drifloon in and out and just have like high hitting basic Pokemon that are close to the meta, and I think that's adding Ralts would have been too much for this. So I've got Shuppet and Banette. Banette EX for 1 energy allows you to block your opponent from using items the following turn. For 2 energy, does 60 damage for each item card in their hand at the time of the attack. So could hit for a lot of damage, could whiff depending on how your opponent's hand looks. I have a 1-0-1 Flabébé to Florges line with that rare candy reliant on getting Florges. Florges can sit on my bench with its Blooming Garden ability, making it so my Pokemon in play have no weakness, which helps when I'm cycling through 4 different types of Pokemon in this deck. I've got 1 simple Flittle. It's got 0 retreat cost, so it's a free pivot. My idea was that any Pokemon, if I get knocked out and I'm not sure what to send in the active yet, or I'm relying on my next turn to get something in the active ready to fight, Flittle is a free pivot that I can put into the active with no regrets. I have a 1-1-1 Sprigatito Floragato Meowscarada line. The Trick Cape attack on Meowscarada allows me to put an energy attached to my opponent's active back into their hand, which kind of slows down their energy cycling. The 1-1 Toad's Cruel does a similar effect with the Eerie Tentacles attack for 30 damage and 1 energy. I can switch an energy from my opponent's active to benched Pokemon. So again, slowing down their attacks. I figure between Banette disrupting and Meowscarada and Toedscruel removing energies, I may be able to slow my opponent down fast enough to attack with things like Houndoom, Blissey, Zangoose, etc. Moving on, I've got a 1-1 Houndour Houndoom line. Houndoom's Fire Blast can do a lot of damage for just a stage 1. Discarding an energy each time I use it. The 1-1 Charcadet Armarouge with the Fire Off ability kind of prevents me from losing those energies if I'm able to cycle them from my bench. The 2 Chansey 1 Blissey line with the Busy Body Nurse ability allows me to heal conditions for my active Pokemon. And Happy Cyclone for 150 damage actually moves all my energy on Blissey to a benched Pokemon, again, hopefully activating Armarouge's ability in the next turn to move those energies back up to Blissey if possible. I've got 2 Squawkabilly, which for 1 energy I can call for Family, which allows me to search my deck for 2 basic Pokemon and bench them. Very helpful. For the last 4 cards, just random. At this point, I didn't know what else to add to the deck. I've got a Flamigo with 1 energy, 30 attack. and 3 energy for 110, also doing 20 damage to Flamigo. Lechonk I put in there with a 1 energy draw for an attack. Zangoose for 2 energy will allow me to switch my opponent's active and benched Pokemon while dealing 30 damage. And Squovit, while mentioning it in the opening, the Nest Dash ability allows me to shuffle my hand back into my deck and draw 1 card. This card would have been excellent had I gotten any more draw support with the deck. So I'm going to move on to trainers and energy now, and then we'll go over the game plan for this deck and get some playtesting in. So for trainers, again, as mentioned in the opening, this is where you're kind of bottlenecked as far as an effective deck, because in 9 packs, I think I got lucky with 16 trainers. Never mind 20, 25, 30. Options are limited. Anyways, for supporter line, I've got Miriam, who allows me to bring 5 Pokemon from my discard back into my deck. Jack, who allows me to search for 2 evolution Pokemon. Jack is the only search I have in this deck. I have Call for Family to get basic Pokemon, and I have 1 Jack hidden in this deck for evolution search. That is the only search I have in this deck. I have Professor's Research, which allowed me to dump my hand anytime I was dead drawing. I had 7 energies in my hand and like a stage 2 Pokemon, and no basics, no trainers, nothing. So Professor's Research was great. 2 pennies, which allow me to just pick up my active Pokemon if it's taking a lot of damage, or pick up a bench Pokemon if I haven't gotten the evolution out. It was also handy in a couple quick pivots, which I was allowed to retreat a Pokemon with a 2 energy cost if I had no energy in hand. 3 Team Star Grunt. Team Star Grunt I thought could pair well with my Grass-type Pokemon in Energy Disruption, moving an energy from my opponent's active Pokemon to the top of their deck. It just proved to not work. Items, I got 1 Pokeball, which rarely worked out because it relies on a coin flip. The Rare Candy, which was mainly for Flabebe into Florges because I did not have Floette, and 1 Energy Switch, which could save me in a time where I need to pivot or I need that 1 extra energy to land an attack. Tools, I got 2 Vitality Bands, which are great because they do 10 extra damage regardless of what my Pokemon's got or your Pokemon, and an EXP Share, which allows me to retain some energy from an active Pokemon when it gets knocked out. Energies, I had 9 Psychic Energy, 7 Fire Energy, and 7 Grass-type Energy. Normally, I would not want that much energy in a deck, but again, with how few trainers I got, and with how few Pokemon I wanted to include in the deck, I figured throwing as much energy in there as possible would make it hard to lack energy, especially with 0 energy search in the deck. And so, along with the deck profile, I had the opportunity to test out this deck in 3 games against my son. He plays Giratina V-Star. It's not a perfectly, meta-type deck. It's got 1 Giratina V-Star, some other tech Pokemon that are less than useful, some trainers that aren't really optimal for the deck. But that being said, it can still get up and running in a few turns, and in that Giratina V-Star with a 280 hit points is hard to take care of when I'm hitting for 30 with most of my Pokemon. So, 2 of the 3 games I lost without even taking a prize card. I was not able to establish enough Pokemon on my bench with enough energy to even resist succeeding attacks, and I eventually lost because I didn't have any Pokemon to put into the active. The second of our 3 games, however, my son had a difficult time accelerating energies onto his Pokemon and having a difficult time moving the Pokemon he wants to battle with into the active. I was 1 prize card away from winning when Giratina V-Star came into the active, and I just had no answer for it. The way I envisioned this deck working was to, if possible, get either Professor's Orders or one of my 2 Squawk abilities into play that would allow me to get basic Pokemon on my bench fast. The Pokeball is in there, which could have allowed for a little bit of search for an evolution Pokemon, as well as Jack. With that, with any luck, a few turns in, I could have Blissey and Houndoom and Armarouge, cycling energies from my bench to my discard, back into my active, swinging for 150 damage on 3 energies, hopefully not taking too many knockouts in that meantime. The Banette EX, in addition to my Grass-type Pokemon, my Meowscarada and my Toedscruel, was kind of a plan B to that method, in that I could slow down my opponent with those Pokemon if they became available to me sooner, where I could slowly build up my Blissey, my Houndoom, and my Armarouge, while trying to just hold off my opponent with anything like Meowscarada or Toedscruel or Banette. It did not work that way. In looking at this deck, it's clear to me that 9 booster packs is enough to build the deck to battle with. It is not enough to build an effective deck out of. My guess is that you would probably need 2 Elite Trainer boxes or 18 booster packs to be able to put a deck together that's got a little bit of synergy, that you can build some consistency with, and that you have enough search power to get an effective game style going. I hope you're able to go off and build an effective, consistent deck with the cards you have sitting around in your binders, and I hope you've been able to take some of the information I presented to you today to help with that. Last question before I call it: would you have done anything different with this deck? There were a couple other Pokemon that I wasn't sure about, that I thought maybe I could switch into the deck after having played it a couple times, but I want to know what you guys think. Also, I am doing a giveaway once I reach my first 100 subscribers on the channel, so if you'd like to come along for the journey, join me. Thanks, I'll see you soon.